Hola, ¿qué tal? Lunaticoin here speaking. You probably haven't heard me before, at least speaking English, because I'm the host of a Spanish-only podcast called Lunaticoin. Beginning the second season of my Spanish podcast, I decided to start recording short English micro podcasts too, and this is the second episode. In today's micropod, I speak with Ruben Waterman, CEO of Bittr, my favorite exchange for staking sats. A 13 minutes talk in where Ruben speaks without filter about his story, where the idea came from, why lightning is interesting, know your customer policy, and which are his future plans for Bittr. If you knew Bittr, you will like it even more. If you don't know it, you will wonder why you are not using it to stack sats while being in Europe. Nothing else to add from my side, so let's get into it. Hi Ruben, thank you for joining me today to speak a little bit about Bittr. First of all, I want to know a little bit about you because it's always interesting to know how the stories of how people fall into the Bitcoin rabbit hole. So, how was yours?
Okay, cool. So back in 2011, I was studying in the US for a bit. It was like a semester abroad. And one of my roommates was like, oh, you got to check out this Bitcoin thing. It's going to be like the future of money. And he's a bit crazy. So I was like, whatever. But I was still curious. So I was like, what can you do with Bitcoin? So I got the Tor browser. I found Silk Road. And I was like, holy shit, you can buy all this stuff. And everything is priced in Bitcoin. Maybe Bitcoin is not for me. So I kind of left it there. I never got further involved. But then I think in 2013, with the first kind of real bull market where it went to €1,000 per coin, I was like, it still exists. And around that same time, one of the major Dutch banks reached out to my university and asked if a couple of students could come in for 3 months, 1 day a week, study Bitcoin for them and see what Bitcoin could mean for the bank. And we created this whole report. We kind of envisioned different scenarios of where Bitcoin could go and how it would fall into their services. We finished the report, and some months later, we even presented it to the board of the bank. So that was it was a cool experience, and that really got me back into Bitcoin and really understanding it. And hey, actually, if this thing works out, we really might get free. Not as in free money, as it is cheap and free, but free as in open and libre kind of money. And I was like, I'm going to follow this. So that's when I also got my first Bitcoin. I bought it completely wrong. I bought it on a Dutch exchange, but I didn't have a Bitcoin wallet. So I found Kraken and I was like, hey, here's a Bitcoin address. So on the Dutch exchange, I put the Bitcoin address of the other exchange. And it was a mess. I didn't know what I was doing. But hey, it was a first experience.
Interesting and funny how different stories everybody has on this topic. So, okay, and then at some point you create Bittr. For somebody that doesn't know what the heck are we talking about, Bittr, can you give the elevator pitch of what is Bittr?
All right. So I basically wanted to create the easiest way to buy Bitcoin on a recurring basis. So this term, maybe you've heard of dollar cost averaging, that is what I wanted to build for Bitcoin. And from my experience with all the existing platforms, it's somewhat they throw a lot of information at you when you sign up. With most exchanges, it's oh yeah, hey, welcome. And by the way, upload your passport copy and your proof of residency. And you see all the trading screens of charts and stuff. And I was like, no, the normal user should not be bothered with all this stuff. Maybe later if it's necessary and if they go down the rabbit hole far enough and they're capable of doing their own transactions on an exchange, that's fine. But I want to have an easy onboarding way. So what I built with Bittr is that you, as a customer, you have to sign up with an email address, phone number, and Bitcoin address. And then you get some payment instructions, which is a bank account and a personal ID. And then when you go into your own bank account and you set up a payment, just like you're going to pay a friend or like maybe your rent, whatever, and it goes and you tell your bank to do it every week or every month, that's how easy Bittr is. And then we will do the conversion for you and send back the Bitcoin to your own wallet.
I'm very interested because I'm using the service, you know it. I'm constantly tweeting. Every time I stack sats, I add your name because this is where I do it. And I'm always curious to know, if you can explain it, what happened behind the scenes? Yeah, behind the scenes when you receive a transfer, what starts moving in that moment?
Okay, so that's kind of funny because when I was looking for a software development company to actually build this, because personally I'm not a developer. I'm quite technical, but not a developer. So when I reached out to a couple of companies and I explained my project, they were like, oh, the first company was like, well, actually, we would love to work on your project, but we don't know how Bitcoin works. And I was like, it's fine, I'll teach you. And don't worry about it, because basically what you need to do is hook up a couple of APIs, and that's it. So when you do a transfer to Bittr, our system basically checks our bank account through the bank's API. Then at that very moment, we will buy the Bitcoin at Kraken at the market price, and we will show this market price to you using their API. And then we will pay out the Bitcoin to your Bitcoin wallet from our own Bitcoin Core wallet from Bitcoin Core's API. So the service is really quite simple. It's hooking up 3 APIs together, and that's what's happening in the background.
Okay, maybe I lost myself at some point, and it looks very easy. But so if you buy the Bitcoin in Kraken, then why do you use? You don't send that specific Bitcoin that you bought is not the one that you are sending to the customer, or how? Because then I don't understand why Bitcoin Core then is involved.
Yeah, so that's correct, because the reason why you would not be able to do dollar cost averaging yourself on Kraken is because of their 50,000 Satoshi fixed withdrawal fee. So we mitigate that by using our a sort of like buffer balance in our Bitcoin Core wallet that we pay out the customers from. And then once a day, we withdraw like 1 or 2 Bitcoin that we bought throughout the day for our customers. We withdraw it from Kraken, and we absorb the 50,000 Satoshi fee for everyone to our Bitcoin Core wallet for the next day. So it's a way to avoid intermediate fees.
Now I understand. Great. Some people might get the impression that Get Bittr is cool because it's private, because they basically don't ask me for anything aside from email and I don't even remember if phone number. Yeah, and phone number. But Get Bittr is fully compliant, and basically you don't see a KYC, but there is a KYC.
Yes. So you do your KYC on the first transaction, and that's why they don't go through automatically, because that is the moment for me to do like a quick background check, like are you on any of the sanction lists? Are you politically exposed? Are you doing, like, do you already have a Bittr profile that you're trying to like combine multiple deposit codes and like stay below the radar? All these checks are done on your first transaction, and that is the KYC procedure. Also, when you do a bank transfer, it's not private at all. Like, I know your name, and you cannot go to the bank and go sign up with a bank account with a fake name. So that is the KYC.
Good. And here in the Lightning conference, yesterday you had a talk, no? And you spoke about Get Bittr and Lightning Network. So basically, it's not active yet, but you will be able to buy Lightning Bitcoin, so Bitcoin that is off-chain, with the same procedure that now we do to buy on-chain Bitcoin. Why do you think getting Lightning Bitcoin is interesting?
So for now, Bittr works great because the transaction and the mining fees are really low. Like, we batch transactions. If you're like on the Monday morning batch, you probably pay 33 satoshis as a mining fee for your transaction. That's that's super cheap. It's less than a cent. That's great for now, but it will not last forever like that. So in the 2017 bull market, we were seeing transaction fees up to $20. If you're stacking sets for 25 euros a week with Bittr and your mining fee is going to be $20, that's not like, then you might as well stop stacking sets because you only end up getting 5. So for me, this is like an experiment to get my hands dirty and like have a feeling with Lightning, do my preparation, and when it's necessary, we can roll it out. So you were mentioning that it's not live yet, and the only reason that it's not live is because a feature that is it's coming to Lightning, which is called spontaneous payments, is not available yet, and that's what we really need, because when you do your SEPA transaction, like SEPA is usually slow, so you don't know when the money is going to arrive to Bittr, and we need to be able to send Bitcoin at any time to you, which we can now do with Bitcoin addresses, but is not yet possible on Lightning because people need to be online. People need to even send me an invoice for that specific amount that they need to receive. And this is all possible with spontaneous payments. We have, well, as you saw yesterday, we demoed it using a development branch of LND, but we don't want to roll it out in production and encourage people to run this because it's really dangerous.
Any idea of any? There is an estimated date, or as you said now, it's like only getting ready for one day to be that you will be able to roll it out fast.
So it looks like the spontaneous payments will be in the next major release of LND, which is planned for February next year, if I remember correctly. So as soon as that is out, we already have a partner to do this with, which is Nodl. As soon as it's out, we will support it. Like everything on our end is ready. A little bit about the partnership and why that's necessary. So for us, in order to do the Lightning payment, we need to have some sort of certainty that the node that we're doing a payment to will be online. So with all the mobile wallets that are out there, we can't really guarantee that because, you know, you might be in a plane, you might be on the road, you might have your phone switched off, whatever. And if that makes the Lightning payment fail and makes us fall back on on-chain transactions, it's kind of pointless. So for now, we know that the Nodl users have their node always online. So we saw like a nice fit in like, hey, why don't you spin up a Lightning node for us, and we can do payments directly to the Nodl users.
Sweet. With such a sometimes people might think, in my opinion, mistaken that simple things are easy, and I had some teachers that told me the opposite. Like to get something simple and working is like the hardest thing because normally you add complexity to make it work and so on. No? And I think that Get Bittr is it proves this. No, it's simple. I'm sure that even at least in the idea, there is complexity to make it simple, but it is hard to imagine like future plans. No, when something works so good and so on. So I wanted to ask you about this. Like, which are the future plans aside from Lightning? There is any future plan? Something in your mind?
Oh yes, but for that we have to go a few steps back first, because my whole idea of Bittr was inspired by an app called Acorns, which I used when I lived in the US. And Acorns is like, to me, the most glamorous user experience when it comes to savings. So that really encourages people to save. It has the dollar cost averaging, but like for traditional finance, so stocks, bonds, real estate, anything like that. But it also hosts like a debit. I think it's a debit, might be a credit card, where you do automatic roundups and put that into your like piggy bank, as we call it with Bittr. So that's kind of my long-term vision, where we have an app which is like Acorns but for Bitcoin.
Sweet. Then like Sats bag kind of a style, but directly through Get Bittr.
Yes.
Great. Then nothing else from my side. thank you, Ruben, for joining me today. And I'm really looking forward to keep seeing new updates on Get Bittr to roll out.
Cool. Thank you very much for the invitation.